Not even immunity can stop us to point to people who are responsible for that disaster. Really not. Because, I mean, decision-making have to be in favor of citizens, not to favor of companies which are surrounded by the municipality. I'm really shocked because, I mean, when I came to the Ministry of Interior, we went through all the contracts. I must say, that was the same story, but not that large. But we succeed to clean it up. It was not an easy way. Yeah? It took us 3-4 months daily work. But now we know what we are standing in front of what we are standing. Yeah? But this is something what we are going to do. I know it will be not easy. It will be painful, and the first thing I will do, I ask for a bodyguard from the Ministry of Interior. Because something what we are, I honestly want to clean it up. And that will be really not easy, and it will really pretty dangerous, and I'm aware of it.
Thank you. Mr. Kassel?
Okay, if I may continue. Well, I know that leading by example is definitely the best answer for any problem, but without the legislation, it can't depend on people. We have such a disastrous law that you cannot compete. As an architect, as I'm competing, I cannot get any public contract because I'm simply offering my fair price. I'm not going below and not hoping for some tricky business after. So this is the representative of executive power. So she's the deputy minister. So she should ask the minister and other people to change the law. And the second or first question, personal responsibility, is the answer. I am definitely supporting the direct election of mayors, hetmans, and say local mayors in villages. And I'm here for definitely voting for the direct responsibility and the record from the city council meeting. Mr. Hudeček voted for something which was a good decision in this case, or Mr. So-and-so decided in the contrary, and there was a wrong decision. So they should take the result of that vote.
Thank you. Mr. Hudeček.
Yeah. When I came to the city hall, I found out a really strange thing that Mr. Bem's signature is something really strange, because I couldn't find any of these signatures. All signatures on the lists, on the contracts, was done by clerks, by white collars. So we changed it, and nowadays every project which is more expensive than 1,000 crowns, sorry, well, 100,000 crowns, sorry, must be approved by the city hall, by a city council, and nowadays it's every of this decision is on internet, so you can find everything. About bad decision making. I spend a lot of time thinking about this problem, and I think the only solution is, as I said before, is a dialogue, and that means that every decision must be before it discussed a lot with experts and companies and citizens. And I tried to explain how I manage it and what is the next step for the future. So I think that the only way how to avoid bad decisions is to discuss all projects before we decide to realize them. This is the only way.
We had a question about contracts here. Is there a place, let's say a state, where you would say we should actually inspire ourselves, we should essentially follow their example, if you will?
Yeah, but I think my colleagues said the right thing, that one problem is in legislation, the second one in people, that's all. But from...
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you here. You are mixing up two things. You are bound by law and the tender recommendations. There you are right. But contract, actually, you can draw according to used to be commercial law, now it's another law, but you are totally free to draw your contract. And contract is the problem. Tender documentation is also a problem, but there are two separate problems actually. You cannot.
Okay, we didn't say. Probably you are talking about long-term contracts. Probably the problem is, for example, the years of the contract, the number of years.
I am from the construction industry, so I'm talking about contracts, for example, for the highways, for the buildings, for everything. These contracts doesn't protect you. These contracts actually expose you. They expose the contractor. They are unclear. Very often, actually, they go against the law. They are so amateurish that I haven't seen anything like that in my life. I don't think it's intention. It's simply disaster, and you have amateurs preparing these contracts.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Can I get one of these contracts, please?
All right. Maybe that's for a discussion after the official part of this debate. I think that would be healthy for both sides. Now, Mr. Posser, please, two questions, personal responsibility and contracts.
Yeah, to the personal responsibility, you can see both extremes in Czech Republic. You can see many of the mayors and vice mayors and councillors that are under the negotiations for something that is, let's say, not exactly their fault. I think that Mr. Hudeček knows what I'm talking about, and I think we all are sorry for that. On the other hand, there are other people who looks like staying out of the law. You see it in the system. That's what I don't understand as well. And I can truly say I see no other answer than what Mr. Krnáčová said, because it should be a public pressure from all of us, from the colleagues, from the local councils. That's what is really important, because I know maybe 2 or 3 mayors in the Czech Republic that has serious problem with negotiation, with the thing that should not be negotiated, and I see hundreds of bad things that are not under negotiation, not under investigation. I don't understand why. And to the quality of the contracts, I think you're completely right, but I think that it's a purpose. It's not just by accident, because somebody was paid for preparing such a contracts. We have to say openly that it's a normal situation on many districts, in many cities. It's not just the problem of the Prague, and it's problem of our responsibility to change it, of all of us.
Mr. Štěpánek?
I think that the contracting issue is much more complicated, because it's a mix of incompetence, of corruption, and of endless sudden changes when the new elected elite brings their own people. And these 3 things create a mess, of which, even if there is no bad intention, create the outcome that you described. And if there's a bad intention, it's even 100 times worse. So we need, and it's hard for the city, but we really need a career ladder for people who are not politicians, who work there. We have to have very clear criteria for them, just like in a corporation or in any other larger entity. And we need to check what they do, and we need to have outside checks on them, and we need to work with those, and we must be tough enough. Obviously, it's much harder in a city hall than in a corporation, because there's no direct vertical, and there cannot be, because as a council we work horizontally, we have different interests and so on. But this, together with complete transparency, is the only way how to improve that.
We've heard the words transparency, corruption, or better put, lack of transparency. So we have named the problem. We understand it is here, but the question is, what would you actually specifically do about it? We've heard it will be hard. We heard that we need to improve transparency. We need to improve contracts. But these are like very general terms. What would you specifically do? I mean, the topic of transparency and corruption has been circulating here in the Czech Republic for a couple of years. But everybody seems to just talk the talk, and nobody walks the walk. So, what would you do? Thank you.
I have a question about Václavské náměstí. I'm sure we all heard Mr. Babish's comments recently on the topic, and I'd be really interested to hear both from Mr. Hudicek and the others whether you feel that that is a great representation of Prague with its casinos, its flashing lights, and the drug dealers that frequently ask you if you'd like to score a hit when you walk down it. Thank you.
I was actually very specific in my last entry, because you really need all those things I named. You really need to implement them, because there's not, for that part that is not elected. As a mayor? As a mayor, you actually appoint a tajemník, a secretary, that is the key person in running the town hall. And while everything is sort of an excuse that the council or an executive council votes on it, with the secretary, you actually have the privilege to appoint and remove that person with an agreement of another person above. But you can really start reforming through that position. So there is that power. Obviously, if you're in coalition, it's harder because other people talk into that. But as a mayor, you have that power, and you really have to use that.
And Wenceslav Square? Mr. Stepanek, the second question was about the state of Wenceslav Square, which to many tourists is rather shocking. Yeah. And I think to locals as well, let's face it. I've seen 8 junkies dealing and shooting up.
Wenceslav Square is obviously the part city on a decline. That always goes around, and there is always a part of the town that is on decline. We can look at the history of London. And Wenceslav Square is that part, and it needs to become... But you don't have
Trafalgar Square or Piccadilly Circus.
It needs to become a priority of renewal. It went through very bad changes in the past because it was a symbolic square. It's been parceled through those sort of flower beds and things that people cannot cross it here and there. The tram that brought life to it's been removed with the advance of subway, and it needs to be returned back. The space needs to be open. It should stop to be divided for the sidewalk road, those blocking flower beds, and despite the flower beds, there's no green, there are no trees or anything. So you gotta unify the space, you gotta return the tram at least to the upper part of it, to connect it to Vodičkova, and we can discuss how far it should go further because it's not easy on that other end. And you have to really focus on small things as well. These were the large things, but you have to, like cleanliness. That there has to be local association with the city. That's gonna clean that place 10 times a day, not once a month, as the SK has it in its schedule. And that's an extremely important part of that as well. And then, last but not least, we have to involve businesses that are on Wenceslav Square to the care of that as well. Not necessarily to pry money out of them, but we really have to make them part of the solution of that as well.
That would take care of drug dealing and prostitution that is happening at the moment during the daylight.
I think that to point out this one particular thing is not a solution to the whole thing, because the problem of Wenceslav Square is not just of these shady existences, but it's the whole structure issue. And for that, what you name, you have enforcement and you have street workers who can deal with that. We just have to start using that and implement that.
Thank you. Mr. Posser?
I will start with the second question.
Feel free.
I fully agree with Mr. Stepanek that Wenceslav Square will need significant changes. I agree with the returning of the tram there, returning of the trees, and I think that it can help also to get the cars under the ground would really help on Wenceslav Square. And if I should add something, and please take it as just my personal idea, I just don't believe that the police, which is, let's say, there is a lot of policemen every day on Wenceslav Square, I cannot imagine they are not a part of the business. It's just impossible. Because you can